into today's content. I already kind of started to tease the start of it. We're going to be talking about designing your go-to ecosystem strategy for investor confidence. So really what we're going to look into here in specific is how you can start approaching or thinking about your go-to market or holistic, even just marketing strategy in general, and how you want to think and divide it, and then how you can start to use that within also your investment pitches. This is also something that I'm hoping can be beneficial just outside of investment in general, but also just generally, how do you actually look at your, launching to new markets? And this is something that is very personal to me because we recently just launched this new framework that I'm going to be using in guide and using as a grounding kind of framework to share all of the, key talking points that I'm going to be talking with you today about. But before we do that, I'm gonna switch tabs. Can you see YouTube right now? Perfect. We're gonna do a quick shake it off session, followed by a 3-minute meditation just to arrive. I don't know about you, but it's December. It's like you were saying, kind of calm, but also busy, stressful, wrapping up season. It's cold and I've been sitting all day. So I hope that this is something our bodies are also going to be happy about, as well as our minds. So we're just going to do quickly 2 minutes of shaking it out, listening to music, and then we're going to do 3 minutes of meditation, and then I'm going to dive into the actual session of today. Any questions before we start? Feel free to mute yourself if you'd like. If you don't mind, then don't mute yourself. You can sit on your chair if that's all you're willing to move today, or you can start to shake and bounce, or you can scream. You can do whatever you want as long as you're muted, please. And I promise I'll mute myself as well. Let me actually just check if the audio, I think I need to enable audio sharing. Okay. Really, you can also see it as a little stretch. Maybe stretch your body. Start to disconnect from all the thoughts, all the things on your to-do list. Just really start to listen actively to the music. I think that just acted as a perfect next segue. And I'm now going to put us a 3-minute short meditation, which I actually do quite a lot with me and my team, really quickly before meetings or before workshops. I hope you can relax a bit, feel your body vibrating a bit from that shaking, and we'll just calm down and get into our breaths before we start.
Close your eyes and find a comfortable position. During this brief meditation, I'll ask you to pay attention to what's happening inside your body right now. You'll find that you don't have to change anything. Just observe. Direct your attention towards your stream of thoughts What thoughts are traveling through your mind right now? Can you give them a name? Notice your feelings. What feelings are present in your body in this moment? Maybe sadness, curiosity, anger. If you can, try to give them a name. Try to notice if there are other kinds of sensations present in your body right now, like tingling, tension, vibrations. Just observe them and let them be. Now shift your focus and pay close attention to your breath. Notice how it feels to breathe in and breathe out. Try to give your breath your undivided attention for a few seconds. Lastly, try to expand your focus and take in the whole body. Notice that you're sitting here with your whole body. You become aware of your posture, your facial expression, your feelings and other sensations. Hold them in awareness, just as they are. Notice that you don't have to struggle to change anything. It's okay to let them be just as they are right now. When you feel ready, open your eyes and return to your session.
That felt nice. How did that feel with you guys?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's good that you did it at the start of the session. You have to disconnect from all the all the work stress. So yeah, it's good.
All the mental junk. Just clear the cache real quick before we start. That's how I like to see it. Awesome. Well, today I'm going to be talking and introducing to you to our approach of really creating a go-to-market and really marketing strategy for your product or service or community. And this is really a really important element, not just for, actually being a bit more strategic and more structured within your marketing function in your business, but also obviously for raising investment. It's one of the key ways that gives kind of, the funders and investors a bit of reassurance. And I'll get to that in a bit. But having a concrete strategy really enables investors' confidence. And the reasons for that is because investors see clarity and assurance that that your business can actually achieve its goals. A solid marketing strategy demonstrates you have a clear path to growth, and you've put enough thought and definition into who you are and who you're trying to reach. It provides proof that you understand your audience as well as the wider ecosystem. And that's something that every kind of investor is looking in from a founder that they're investing in. It's also a way to showcase your strategic thinking. So a well thought out strategy reassesses investors that every action aligns with achieving measurable outcomes, and it's your roadmap for achieving your goals and objectives. So really it gives investors confidence in their own return of investment, or like what they will be able to actually, and when I say return of investment, I don't only necessarily mean revenue or profit here, but even just like return of impact, you could even see it that way. What are they gonna get in return, and what's the potential that they're unlocking? It helps you mitigate risks and helps investors also see that, you know, they are also then consciously mitigating risks, but because you're also thinking about that. So without a strategy, growth efforts can seem reactive or disconnected, and investors see that as risky. And your marketing or go-to-market strategy highlights how you've minimized these risks by understanding and aligning with market and customer needs. So when you Google what a go-to-market strategy is, this is what you could find, and there's multiple different variations of this. But a go-to-market strategy traditionally is a strategy that has a comprehensive plan, and that a business uses to bring a new product or service to market. And when I say a new product or service, this is something that people, like most startups, launch a product or service without having a proper go-to-market strategy, and then start to realize later on, and this is the case with most of our clients, that they're actually needing to create their first go-to-market strategy, even though they've kind of been dabbling around and operating in the market for even a few years. But really, it's kind of your first strategy when entering a new market. And it's designed to mitigate the risk of inherent in the introduction of a new product or service. A typical go-to-market strategy includes target market profiles or personas, a marketing plan, as well as a concrete sales and distribution strategy. So those are, again, some key terms that usually would come up in the definition of what a go-to-market strategy is. And just so you know, next session, the session is going to be all about crafting your first investor pitch deck. The go-to-market strategy is a section of that. However, it's really what I'm going to be talking about today is all the kind of foundational work that goes behind it to be able to then summarize it in a few slides, right? It's the underneath the hub, if you'd like. So how can you create a realistic strategy that aligns with your business goals and values at the same time? And that kind of touches to what you were saying, Cecile, around like actually also understanding what your own personal foundational beliefs are and values, and how does that then also align with your brand, like we were discussing in our purpose and our narrative session. But then also now looking at your growth strategy and like entering to a new market. How can that also then align holistically with your values and your core kind of essence? So what I'd like to go through today is the introduction of the go-to ecosystem framework. And really, the go-to ecosystem framework is an alternative to a traditional go-to-market approach. And it's a kind of go-to-market approach that focuses on, well, usually the traditional or conventional go-to-market approach usually focuses on quick wins, market dominance, often prioritizing kind of short-term growth and over sustainability. Whereas what we're trying to introduce at Zebra Growth, and how we're working with many different startups around the world, as well as kind of organizations, sometimes also NGOs, is to look at it from a go-to ecosystem point of view. Really, on the other hand, fostering long-term resilience, planning for collaboration, planning for shared success within your ecosystem, and really focusing on creating healthier outcomes for your business, for your team, for your communities, and for the planet, as well as gaining traction in revenue and profit. It's not just focused on that though anymore. So this is like a comparison. By the way, I'm going to be sharing this slide deck, and because there's quite a few slides that I'm going to be going through today, some of them I'm going to be kind of like just skim through them, but please feel free to review them after the session and go through the specific details on the slides, and feel free to also reach out if you have any questions. I'm going to give you a few examples between the difference of a normal or traditional go-to-market strategy versus a go-to-ecosystem strategy, but I'm not going to go through them all because there are quite a lot here. Well, I'm going to start with the objectives. So as I mentioned before, in the traditional go-to-market strategy, the main objectives is short-term growth, rapid profits. And that's something that most founders are kind of following blindly, because that's usually what's the best practice around how you create a go-to-market strategy. It's usually looking at the biggest scale-up unicorns and copy-pasting what they're doing. On the right side, what we're trying to introduce is how can you actually have a focus of long-term community and ecosystem health, and take that as your core kind of overarching metric of success. And again, that doesn't mean that you're needing to neglect your own financial growth and success, but it means that you're looking at something beyond than that. And that's actually the health of the ecosystem that you're within, that you're serving, that you're collaborating with. Another example that I'm going to be sharing is around, for example, metrics. So in a traditional go-to-market approach, the main metric is always around usually profitability. Sometimes it's profitability mixed with scalability. So really, it's purely financially focused metrics. And what we're introducing through this go-to ecosystem approach is having a more balanced kind of approach to metrics, where you're actively trying to monitor, in whatever degree possible, really, your financial, social, and environmental impact that you're having towards, and that you're involved in or you're affecting really through your business activity. I'm going to go to the next slide here, but like I said, please do come back to this. This is a bit of just setting. Sorry?
I also had a question around, so with customer relationships, what do you mean by equity focused?
So equity focus is really talking about or recognizing that, maybe also not all of your customers are going to be the same, and some of them might be more privileged than others. And there's kind of this equity lens that we're not going to go in too much detail in this session into, but really what we're inviting people to start to think about is how can you think about equality as well as equity, even when you're thinking about, for example, your pricing strategy or how you maintain relationships. So it's like taking I guess that diversity step into one extra level, if that makes sense. And examples of that. So I'll give you practical examples of that. You could, for example, have that could affect your pricing strategies even, right? So you could even have scholarship funds for minority groups. You could have, that's like a classical business model iteration that can influence. It can be like how you serve and communicate with your audience, and like the way you communicate and the words that you choose. So this one is a bit of a broad one that you pinpointed, rightly so. It is again more of like an open-ended kind of lens that we're inviting people to take. And that's also not something, like I said, we're going to go into too much detail in this specific one. And David, just to give you a bit of background on this, is also because we recognize that marketing has a lot of colonial connections. And actually, one of our core foundational beliefs is that marketing needs to be decolonized. So does business and capitalism. So within that lens, how can we also look at the injustices in the world and see how we can also integrate that within our marketing strategies to kind of cancel that out? That's kind of the thinking behind that. Any other questions before I move on? Like I said, this is kind of just context setting. This isn't like that important for you now to really memorize or really understand every single element. But I'll just quickly highlight why this shift is actually really important for A, investors, B, yourself and your business, and C, the planet. So one, investors, a go-to ecosystem strategy prioritizes resilience and sustainability, which reduces risks and builds long-term value. And if you start to communicate it in that way, actually, it gets quite attractive in the long term for many investors. And again, that also will depend on obviously the type of investment that you've also chosen. Secondly, for your business, it creates stronger relationships with customer partners, with communities, as well as leading to greater trust and loyalty within your customer base. And again, this focus of resilience over rapid scale, which most startups approach but fail at, is actually a healthier way to build growth over long term. So really create also more longevity in your business. And thirdly, it's really better for the planet because the go-to ecosystem strategy aligns business growth with the health of our environment and society, making every action kind of a tiny bit more regenerative than we would usually approach it. So I'm going to pause right there before going into the actual different sections of the framework. And we're going to be doing multiple pause sections similar to these, where we're just going to discuss some questions. But before I actually go into outlining what we would recommend you do if you're building your go-to-market strategy for the first time, and even if you've done it before, how we would recommend you maybe re-looking at it, I'd love to ask both of you these two questions. Number one is, what is your experience on creating and executing go-to-market or even generally marketing strategies in the past? And David, I know you've kind of mentioned a few things that you've been trying in the past, and I'd love to kind of hear more about that. And then two, are there any aspects of your current go-to-market strategy, if you have one or even vaguely have one in mind, or practices that could easily transition into more of this go-to-ecosystem approach that I just kind of started to tease? And you can choose to answer one or both of them, but I'd love to hear, yeah, from both of you just to open this up before we get into the juicy bits of the framework. Maybe first question, even before that, have you ever heard the term go-to-market? Okay, so Cecilia, you haven't heard the term go-to-market. What about when you're thinking about marketing strategies, Cecile? Have you ever created a marketing strategy for your business?
I tried. It's not easy for me. It's not like I don't know. It's not something is coming naturally. It's not easy because when it's the first time, you don't know what, why, how. So you kind of like taking some bits here, and try to make something and see if it's kind of like working a little bit. So, and then, yes, so I don't know. I think maybe David might have a better example than me to start.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing. So what I'm hearing, Cecile, is like, first of all, you haven't heard the term go-to-market before. Second of all, you've been obviously doing marketing for your business, but it's been a bit more like doing bits and bobs, and you haven't maybe gone through this formal creating a complete marketing strategy, like from A to Z, if that makes sense, right? Cool. David, would you like to share?
I was going to say we're all in the same boat, Cecile, so we're all chucking shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. But in terms of like, for me, I would say like we kind of developed a go-to-market strategy over the last year-ish. But before that, it was basically we're trying out different experiments, but now we kind of know what works really well for us, then what enables us to get customers.
Cool. Lovely. And how far are you with that go-to-market strategy right now? Is it more something in your heads or something you've actually properly documented, or is it in the finished state or finishing process?
I'll say it's, but I think we go to, so my term in go-to-market strategies is there's a limit to each of them. So right now, our best go-to-market strategy is going to one conference a year. And it's like a big bang approach, but like the return on investment is actually really big for us. And then there's some other strategies that we have that we could use, but that we know works, but it doesn't, like the return on equity, the return on investment is not as big as just going to that one conference.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, right, like that's going to start decreasing, and then we'll need some new strategies. So part of what we do is we try and experiment with other strategies as we go along. So one of the ones we're experimenting with right now is like a referral program.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So what I'm hearing is at the start, you've been really just going with the flow, experimenting, trying different things out, but not really being formal about the strategy. And over the past year or so, you've kind of recognized, the main tactic that's been working the most.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you're kind of starting to document, but also there's some other things that you're starting to consider. And it's like one thing that's maybe is going to kind of reach its limit maybe as well, or,
Yeah.
isn't
So I think for us is like we got three that we know works,
yeah.
and then but also there's a process of constantly trying out new stuff because it's worth trying it, because at some point the ones that you have you're gonna reach a limit, because I mean right now they're easy because no one really knows you, but also while you've gotten all the customers you can from that kind of channel, and then you just try different ones. But also by trying different ones, sometimes stuff pops up that you're just like, oh wow, we could have done this, and that would have been so much more easier.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe one thing that what's coming out to me as you're talking, David, is that actually what you've been focusing a lot on is like strategizing around and deciding around key tactics that work for you and ones that are more or less effective. Which is a really good point, because actually there's so many different, again, types of definition what a go-to-market strategy is. And I think this is also one of the purposes of these questions that I'm posing here. What I'm going to be talking about today, and just as a reference point, I've created around 400-ish, counting marketing / and or go-to-market strategies for clients over the past kind of 15 years. And really, again, I've even done them in various different forms and different shapes and forms. This is kind of like the learnings from all of those, and integrated with our kind of recent partnerships, let's focus on the impact and regeneration or ecosystemic approach to business and marketing. What I'm going to be introducing in this framework is a lot more holistic than just one tactic. So actually what you were pointing out to David is this element of experimentation, which is something that's actually embedded in this framework as well. And there's different types of go-to-market strategies, even traditional ones that are a bit more lean startup focused, that also adopt that. So it's a strategy where you can start to also have elements of experimentation inside of it. And again, a lot of the things that I'm going to be sharing, maybe even today, you're kind of naturally already doing or have already thought about, but you haven't maybe formalized, you haven't maybe put together, you haven't connected the dots with everything else, and you haven't kind of documented to then review and update in the future, right? Or make a bit more strategic kind of educated guesses around them. So let's explore how you can start adopting a go-to ecosystem approach in your marketing strategy. And really, in other terms, you can also see this, again, with the context that you just both shared with me. Really, this is how we would suggest of you creating your first marketing strategy for your core product or service, if you don't have one before. And how we're actually introducing this is in 3 different chapters. The first chapter consists of ponder, the second chapter consists of prepare, and the third chapter consists of play. And these are potential chapters of your strategy. And just so you know, we actually started to create strategies on dynamic, like Notion. I don't know if you've heard of the tool Notion, or like an online documentation system, where it's something that we create a strategy in, but then we continuously update and add things on as time goes on. So it becomes more of a dynamic strategy. And the reason for this doesn't only kind of inspire what you can start to add inside of your strategy. However, it is also kind of cycles that we would recommend you going through. So ponder is actually the strategic reflection and zooming out cycle that we would advise every business to do on an annual basis, at least on an annual basis. Prepare, on the other hand, is a cycle that we would recommend business owners or director teams to go through kind of every season, if you'd like. And that could be considered, for example, as every quarter. And that's really laying the foundations and concrete plans for your marketing activity. Whereas then in the play cycle, that's the kind of quickest cycle. And usually we recommend teams to do this often, if you'd like. And this can be applied for teams also, but also for like solopreneurs even. So it's not necessarily only for bigger companies here. And the play chapter, but also the play cycle, like I said, could be seen as something you do often. It could be something that you do every 2 weeks, every month, every 2 months. It's really kind of your sprint cycle. And this is what allows you to say, actually, I'm going to schedule out the content for the next 2 months, or for the next month, sorry, or the next 2 weeks. It's how often you're like doing quick cycles of iteration and experimentation and communication. As you can see here, there are then sub-chapters under each section. So every year, what we recommend you to do is to actually start to reflect around your core essence. What is it that we foundationally believe in? What is my purpose, etc. We then actually recommend us to go and reflect again around, do we know our ecosystem? Who is our ecosystem? Who's within our ecosystem? Then we understand our planned outcomes. So we start to set high-level strategic planned outcomes, as well as start to dream big for the future on an annual kind of basis. And if you're doing this for the first time, then thinking about, well, what is that big dream for the next few years, as well as how can we start to create some more planned intentional outcomes for the coming year to come that will guide all of our marketing activity. We then go to define our core value proposition, as well as just positioning in general. And again, these are some elements that we've already started to tease out in the past sessions that we talked about. And hopefully you'll start to also see some overlap between some of the things that I'm going to go over to. And it continues. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details. We're going to go through most of these in the coming slides. However, I just wanted you to give like this high level perspective of what, you know, your strategy should consist of before we actually go a bit deeper. Any questions on this? So 3 cycles, I think that's the most important element. Annually, seasonally, as well as monthly, if you'd like. So pondering, reflection, going deep into your essence, into understanding your audience and your ecosystem, into planning for the next year. Then there's the prepare section, which is all about prioritizing and exploring what are your key partners and how can you prioritize the right partners. It's really designing your user journeys, your human journeys, and what the different steps are that customers and partners and different stakeholders would take in interacting with your brand. It's looking at how you're going to plan your presence and the different content you want to start to share, as well as really planning for what kind of resources and team. And when I say team, it could also be freelancers or other supporting kind of, skill sets that you are required to have to make that happen over the next quarter. And then in the play section, it's all about sharing your story, communicating. It's all about connecting to the ecosystem, connecting to the people that you're actually wanting to engage with and engaging and interacting with them. It's then starting to monitor every month and every week, really, your performance around what you're bringing out in the world. And then finally, it's refining your messaging and your offering on that kind of cyclical basis as well. This is the framework in a visual representation. And as you can see here, there's these 3 rings that are inside each other. And the outside ring is the ponder ring. And this is the biggest ring because it's actually the slowest one. That's what you would change, like I said, every year. Whereas the middle ring is the prepare ring. That's when you, again, look into what is actually our user flow and journeys looking like, who are the key partners, what's our team setup looking like, and what are the key content pillars or topics, and how are we going to present ourselves over the next quarter. And then we go into the play, which is the smallest one, and that's kind of all embedded within each other. What does that mean? That means that actually the decisions we take every month should be influenced by the things that we defined in the outer layer. So this is a kind of a strategy that has 3 interconnected or nested systems inside of them. So if we decide, for example, what our core objectives or outcomes would be in the next year, that should influence our decisions on what experiments we run every month, right? It should influence what messaging and who we're interacting with and who we're communicating with. Same thing goes with our essence or our purpose. So if our purpose statement and our core foundational beliefs is something, when we share something on our social media, it should kind of align with that and shouldn't go against it. So it gives this also gives us an ability to make also effective decisions within our marketing activity every day, every week, and every month. Now, one other element I'd also like to introduce is this right and left-hand side. And the left-hand side stands for our core foundational beliefs. And these are really what we are, like how we see the world. So I'll give you an example. I believe that using time-based and stress-induced language actually harms your long-term relationship with your potential client. That's a belief I personally have. And actually all of the messaging that we create, part of that is in our company kind of respects that core belief. And that's something that we kind of discussed internally in the team as well. Now, your foundational belief can be something totally else. It can be anything, really. It's any theory, any framework, any experience, or any clear thought of the world, or specifically within your topic, within your industry, within even just how you communicate in general, that you believe in and that you see the world through. And actually, that goes back to the comment that you made, Cecile, at the start, is like, how do you actually, feel confident with what you're sharing in your business, in your marketing activity, in your campaigns, if you actually don't understand what you believe in as a human? And this is where the two kind of start to also, interconnect. I've been taught a lot of things that influence the way I run my business and the way I do marketing, and I'm in the marketing industry because I provide marketing services. So that's really relevant to me. And that's why most of my foundational beliefs are around marketing, around how businesses should run. For you, it might be totally different, right? It might be something around your industry, something around your specific location of where you're operating. It's just some core beliefs that actually matter a lot to you and that actually influence all your decisions. And reflecting on those continuously is something that we encourage. And that's why there's this loop on the left side. Now, on the right side, and really all of your strategy should kind of get influenced by that. And if you're multiple people in the team, understanding, your co-founders' foundational beliefs and how that's influencing their activities and their views is also a really great exercise to create alignment. And then again, make sure that your marketing, communications, and brand is truly aligned with your core team as well. On the right-hand side, it's also, I would love to introduce this concept of emerging outcomes. And what we believe in, and this is why we're calling this play, and as I mentioned before, every month you can look at it as experimenting and testing different things out to iterate and really connecting and communicating with potential stakeholders or customers or different partners and stakeholders in your ecosystem. However, it's nested within the structure, but there's still that room of playing and experimenting, right? And what we believe in is if we create the right conditions and there is actually the conditions focus on creating a healthy ecosystem, which means healthy team, healthy founder, healthy marketing team, whoever's involved in the marketing, but also the healthy customers and healthy partners that are involved in our kind of communications and touch points, then that also allows for emerging outcomes to happen. So, how I was talking about we're planning next year's outcomes. Those are not necessarily as emerging because we're knowing or we're really planning for those to happen. However, we recognize that there are also many outcomes that can happen without us ever knowing. And so being open to that and continuously reflecting what could actually emerge in the next few years, and that usually is a more long-term thing, can sometimes guide our marketing activity to help us decide, actually, we should kill this campaign and we should start this new one. And that's kind of similar to the dilemma that you were mentioning, David, about this one tactic that you're trying, but there's also other tactics that might work, and kind of grounding yourself on actually what's your foundational beliefs, what feels more right, what you believe in, as well as looking at what could we tap into, and is there a potential that we might not even be planning for at the minute. Those are two mechanisms that, again, can help steer all of your marketing strategy and your kind of decisions as you kind of run out different, marketing campaigns. So just as a recap, each stage builds on the previous one, as mentioned. Reflect deeply in the ponder stage, strategize and plan thoughtfully in the prepare stage, and execute and implement boldly but adaptively in the play stage. And these are the three stages that, again, what I would recommend is also the things that you can use as input for actually what thinking should you put into and what decisions do you need to make before you actually execute. So that's where the strategy comes in. Any questions before I move on? I know this is a lot of information that I'm sharing. Cool. Well, what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through each stage, because really what I've been explaining so far is really high level. And I'm sure you're probably also thinking that, like, okay, but like that's so theoretical and high level. How does that apply in the day-to-day? And how would this even look like in my strategy, right? So if you actually had to write a strategy over the next few weeks, your go-to market strategy for next year, for example, what would you actually include? So the first step and the first cycle, like I mentioned, and that's where the rest of your strategy should be grounded and rooted in, starts with the ponder stage. And this is all about reflecting and aligning to your core essence. So here we want to focus on understanding your brand's essence, your ecosystem, so your target audience, different stakeholders in your ecosystem, as well as the outcomes that you aim to achieve. And these outcomes can be vision-based, can be, things around what could emerge, what potential could be tapped into. So really thinking big, as well as your next year's kind of quarterly goals and intentions for your marketing. And this is really to establish a strong foundation for all of your actions to follow. And step one here is to define your essence. And this is something we kind of touched upon in the first sessions around the power of storytelling, around understanding your why, around digging into what impact do you want to actually create or have in this world with the business activity that you're undergoing, right? So really the step one's purpose is to clarify your brand's foundational beliefs and to uncover its unique purpose. And the key outcome here is to really have a strong and aligned purpose statement between you and your team that can guide you at least over the next year. And this purpose statement, again, can be used as a decision-making tool as well. So any brand or marketing decision that you take over the next year that kind of counteracts or goes against this purpose statement is something you'd want to question, right? How you can do this is by exploring your foundational beliefs and the kind of role you're wanting to take in your ecosystem. And this is basically by just asking yourself that and prompting that. Now, if you're in a team, it would be advisable to create a few workshops. Give yourselves a few weeks time to really go deep into this. Really ask yourselves, what do we believe that influences how we work and how we show up? And how we show up with our brand and with our business. On the other hand, we ask ourselves, what role do we actually want to play in the ecosystem? What is our role in the ecosystem and how has that changed or evolved maybe since the past few years? The second thing is to create a purpose statement that reflects your mission and long-term vision. And this is something I'm not going to go into too much detail, like I said, as that's been kind of covered in the previous sessions. Step two, after you actually define your essence, it's to understand your ecosystem. It's to map your different stakeholders. It's to map your different partners. It's to understand your core audiences, including your customers that make up your core ecosystem. Yes.
Is it okay if I interrupt?
Please go.
So it's step one, right? Is basically what we covered in the other sessions where we think about this is what we do, where we do like, the theory of change and then all that stuff. And then you basically do the exercise. And then after you've done the exercise, you're like, okay, cool. This is what we started for. Is that correct?
100%. 100%.
That's it.
So after you do that exercise, you could summarize that in a few sentences, and that is step one completed.
Cool. All right. Brilliant. Thank you.
Now, importantly is it needs to resonate with your other co-founders or other team members, right? So that's also just important. It can't happen in isolation by one person. Step two is to understand your ecosystem. And it's to map your stakeholders, like I said, your partners and your core audience members that make up your core ecosystem. And here you can try to even visualize this. This is really what we would do in most projects, like literally draw it out. You can draw it out within bubbles, like I'm currently within the French ecosystem or the British ecosystem, or from a geographical point of view. But then we can also think about it, we might be a global company, so we're actually just part of a specific industry. It could be that we're part of an ecosystem that's fighting for a specific cause. So there are these kind of questions and discussions that you need to have to understand what ecosystems, because often it's multiple, not just one, are we even a part of? And how can I start to map it out? How can I start to draw it out? Who are my suppliers here? Who are my customers? Who are my partners? Who are my influencers? Who are my blockers? Who would block this potential kind of decision to buy from us or interact from us? Who are the consultants and the supporters? So really mapping it all out. You could even go one step further, which we often like to challenge our clients with, which is, what are the natural ecosystems and non-human ecosystems that we're even a part of? We're producing a specific product. So what's our supply chain looking like? What is actually the raw materials that we're touching and influencing, right? On the other hand, maybe we're having an office in the middle of some natural place or next to a lake, for example. And that's even that extra bonus step if you'd like to see it that way, of like, how can you actually look at your entirety of your ecosystem? But obviously, first, we would recommend you to start with your customers, with your partners, with your suppliers, and the human ones. And once you have this kind of mapped out, it will give you so much clarity around, well, okay, these are all the different people we're kind of interdependent from. And how can we now understand how we communicate with them and who to prioritize? And it gives so much clarity. And most founders, when they go through this exercise, they're usually shocked by how much more they can understand their ecosystem or their audiences, and the different people involved in relationships. But really, this also gives you the best opportunity to then start to validate or create different hypotheses around the core stakeholders. So from there, then you go into, for example, mapping the core audiences, understanding, just like you've done with the investors in the last session, here you'd look at your core customers as well as your core partners. The next thing is to plan your outcomes. So what that means is to, first of all, like I said, look at your vision, look at what is the dream, and is the dream really up to date, and can we align with our within the team around that dream? What is the potential that can be unlocked here in the long term? And then also, what is that one regenerative, what we like to call regenerative growth metric? So again, this is connected to the theory of change workshop that I also introduced, because this will help you understand what kind of outcomes you can start, you should start to measure or monitor. Another thing that you can approach this step by is to define intentions and measurable results. Really, this is another way of saying objectives and key results, which is what are the key 3 to 5 objectives that you have each quarter, or at least even each year, and what are the key results that will help prove that you're getting closer to those objectives. And this again can guide all of your marketing activity. An example of that could be that you want to increase the amount of brand awareness in the coming year. Then you can think about, well, what are the 3 most important metrics that you can start to gather? And for each business, it's going to be different. For the maturity of what you can measure and what you're doing, it's going to mean that you can actually have access to different types of data. But just having that mindset of, what is it actually that matters the most that will help me understand the progress on that strategic objective over the next year, like increasing our brand awareness. The clearer we have that defined, the better that we can actually ground ourselves when we're actually testing different things out, when we're experimenting. We can always kind of go back to this and be like, okay, well, these are our core strategic objectives. Is it that what we're doing now, a few months after we finish the strategy, does it actually help us get us closer to our objectives? Now, an important thing that we also always recommend is to make sure that at least 1 or 2 of those objectives are focused on your team's health, at least. And number 2, as well as your audience, at least your customers' health. But really, the more audience members' health you can start to also include in your objectives, the more resilient you can become, because we foundationally, or at the core, believe that any growth journey is interdependent with the relationships that you're building. So the health of a relationship is actually a way more important metric than the short-term revenue that you can generate from a customer, because usually that can lead to a long-term, way more profitable and way more resilient business model.
Oh, sorry, and a quick question. Do you have any objectives about do you have any examples of objectives that are based on team or customer health? Because it would be useful too.
Yeah, so usually when it depends again on your product and your service.
So for you guys, what's your last objective also based on team or customer health? That would be good to get a concrete example.
Yeah, so maybe I can quickly explain from a team point of view, first of all. From our point of view, we measured our team's health by usually 2 things. How smooth is the flow of information that our team interacts with on a day-to-day basis? And do they have all the important and necessary information for them to be empowered to do their jobs? The second thing is how energetic or how energized are they? Now, these are 2 broad questions that we ask our team members at least once a week. Sorry, at least once every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we have a team meeting where we ask all team members, how energized do you feel towards life and your job specifically? And are you getting the right information flow? And is to enable you or empower you to do your job right? So these are usually kind of the core pillars for us. And we've got that from another framework as well that I would highly recommend to view health in that perspective, because that's like the pillars that foster health in the long term.
And then a follow-up question to that. So in my team, right, one of the members is not feeling energized right now. Is there anything you can do around that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends what's the problem. Then the thing is, we recognize that when I say energized, so if I'm not feeling respected in my job, I'm not going to be energized in my job, right? So there's so many different things that could
I think it might just be there might be a lot of work, or like I think he might think there's a lot. He feels like he's got a lot of pressure because there's a lot of tasks we need to do. But yeah, so that I think that might be it.
I think the first thing is you just need to have a conversation with them and address it, right? So that's the whole point. If you start to actually become more aware of these questions and start to monitor it, you don't even need to go to the details. You just address it by asking the question. Seems like you've been demotivated over the past few weeks. Do you want to have a quick half an hour chat and let's like dive into what the root cause of that could be? And if it is just I have too much on my plate, the next question is probably how can we mitigate that? Because burnout actually is one of the biggest reasons marketing teams fail in growth strategies. And it's not widely discussed actually and talked about, but it is. I've worked in so many different marketing teams, and burnout is like a huge issue, especially in marketing because it's very performance oriented and data driven and pressured, right? So as a founder doing marketing, it's also then double. So when you're thinking, and that's why we're so keen on including things like team health as well as the health of your customer, because how many times have you bought something but then started to hate that brand afterwards because they've like you felt just like manipulated in like just buying something and you start to disconnect, and that's not what a resilient long-term growth strategy looks like in my point of view.
Cool. No, thank you.
What I want to say is you can measure this in multiple ways. I think the easiest way to start is just asking yourself, what's the 1 or 2 questions I can start asking my team on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that can help indicate this, right? And that can change, and the way you do it can change. But I think just starting, the sooner you start, the sooner you realize, actually, it's not that complicated. We don't need to have a full tracking system for it. We just need to ask the question, have that conversation. We've also tested systems, tools like Office Vibe, for example, where you can do weekly surveys with your team. And really, a survey or question that we have included in the past is like, has work contributed or extracted from your health this week? So if we're continuously extracting from the team's health, it's not a recipe for success. And again, those are things that it's just a question in a form or a survey that people can ask. And even simpler, it can even be a question that you just routinely ask in a meeting. It just needs to be something that you prep your team for as well, right? It's just that you can't just like awkwardly be like, oh, by the way, from 0 to 10, how energized are you? Just random question. So it is something that you would need to like plant the seed with the team and be like, oh, this is something that let's test it out for a few weeks. Let's see if this is helpful or not. It might be silly, and then kind of get buy-in, actually try to do it together. But really, it's the intention matters more than the actual way of tracking, if that makes sense. Any other questions, or should I move on? Cool. Well, that was really the 3 core sub-chapters of Ponder. Now, when I'm building a go-to ecosystem strategy right now for a client, and the first sections of the strategy are called our essence, understanding our ecosystem, and planning our outcomes. Like that's literally the sections of how I started the strategy for one of our clients. And our essence, I've defined things like our vision statement, our purpose, our mission, our foundational beliefs, and our core narrative, as we've discussed in the earlier session. In the ecosystem, I've mapped out who our core stakeholders are, and then I started to prioritize the key ideal personas, including the key customers as well as key partners that I'm starting to define and create core hypotheses about. And I'm starting to understand or document, better said, what are their core needs, what are their core jobs to be done, or what are they actively looking to solve. And those are sections, like I said, the first sections of a go-to ecosystem strategy. Now, and lastly, planning our outcomes, sorry. So what is it that we want to like imagine we could untap in potential over the next few years? And then also, what are the core activities we're going to prioritize, and what are the core objectives we're going to start to track to help us understand if we're progressing in the right direction or not. Now, 3 questions I'd love to bounce off both of you, and you can choose again either 1, 2, or even all 3 if you'd like. Question number 1 is, what are the non-negotiable beliefs and values that define your brand and guide its decisions? And this might be a spontaneous reflection session, so there's no right and wrong here. Number 2, what are the untapped or underutilized connections in your ecosystem that can strengthen your overall health? And just really quickly, financial health is for us a key metric of health. If you're financially not healthy, you're also not healthy in general. As well as resilience. So some connections can provide more resilience than others. So really, this is hoping for you to try to think about the different stakeholders and players in your ecosystems that maybe you haven't seen in a point of, oh, they might actually be a really great contributor to our collective health. Number 3, how can your short-term marketing goals build momentum towards achieving your long-term impact vision? So really, how are the short-term marketing goals that you're setting connected with that long-term impact you want to create? The change that you want to have, again, going back to the purpose that you have and you've defined in your business. I'm going to leave it to whoever feels drawn to start. And like I said, there isn't no like right or wrong answer for this. This is really just a sharing and reflection moment. And also a moment to ask any follow-up questions from the last 3 sub-chapters I just introduced. Cecilia, do you want to start?
I don't really want to start, but I'm going to start. So, so we take how can your short-term marketing? So we take this one, the last one. I would say that is going to give the impulse I need, and to give the confidence also, because you need to kind of like a boost of confidence to be able to continue and to achieve my long-term impact vision.
I love it. So it's almost like you're seeing that there's also an element of getting energized, really, around being more resilient as well, right? Like, how can you add resilience around more energy and more momentum? Thank you. David, over to you.
Cool. Yeah, let's start with the bottom one too. So in terms of us, we're actually not doing any marketing or so we're not doing any marketing and stuff for probably the next like 2 to 3 months. And then, but for us, it means that it allows us to achieve our long-term goals, because we can focus more time on building our products and then improving our products with our existing customers. So it just gives us more bandwidth, which allows us to do more stuff. And then part of that's also where we're also not planning to take on more customers, because it gives us more bandwidth to build more features, and then aim to take them on in like April, May. So what are the untapped or underutilized connections in ecosystems? The one that came immediately to mind was probably like my ex-colleagues, the people that I've previously worked with. And then there's probably stuff that it can be provide use around in terms of, I mean, just helping from a technology perspective, but also funding too. That's probably something. And then what are non-negotiable beliefs and values that define your brand and guide its decisions? To be honest, I don't know. I need to have a think about that one.
Yeah, that's a deep one. Don't worry about that. I love what you said here around your ex-colleague. Seems like, and really this is again the intention of that question is like to really understand, is there some maybe hidden goals in relationships that you usually don't think about in day-to-day because they're not that obvious main customer. Cecile, anything you'd like to add before we move on?
No, but Max is here. I don't know if you want to.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he's here. Sorry,
Oh,
Max.
I'm here. Yes, apologies. I was late. I got overlapped with meetings. I apologize, everyone.
no worries. Did you just join or when did you join?
Oh, no, I've been here for about 15, 20 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, so that means you can probably answer at least one of these questions.
Yes, thanks, Cecile. Brilliant. Right. What are your
Your
non-negotiables?
camera is off, by the way. I don't know if that's intentional. If that is, that's totally fine.
Um, Eating some food in the background. Don't know if you want to see it.
Oh, if
Sorry, it's
that's
been one of those days I've barely had a moment to myself. I do apologize.
no
Right.
worries.
Okay.
You know?
Non-negotiables, beliefs and values. Commitment to excellence or design standards. They can't slip, otherwise the business would just fail. That's what changes our face about game. If we can't produce better standards than other competitors, what's the point? What are the untapped, underutilized connections? Oh, it's got to be maybe influencers or maybe or LinkedIn or key decision makers who have quite large followings. Maybe people like that could help. Just to help get out there as well. That's quite good. I've done that before. Number three, how can your short-term marketing goals build momentum towards your long-term vision? And marketing goals. Well, I mean, they're going to be the yeah, they will help form the entire process, right? Without any marketing, we're just going to stay in the same place, right?
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was well
Thanks.
answered. Um,
I try.
good, good improvisation on the spot. I like it. Um, but thank you so much for sharing. And really, I'm seeing a bit of overlaps around the space it can create as well in general for your business, creating that space and buffer in general for you to also be able to add more momentum and grow the business in different ways and the products. Um, and I really loved what you said around the quality, around a foundational belief there, because that also shows how, again, there's no right and wrong, right? It's just what matters to you and how is that being lived out in your brand and in your marketing and in your business in general. And if that isn't being reflected, then there's probably some tension that's getting built up over time.
Yeah.
This marks, actually, I was saying, we're going to jump into the next section in a second, but we're going to take 5 minutes just to take a quick break, take a quick pause, and then we'll continue. But is there any questions before we pause for a minute? Okay, awesome. Then we can meet back at 20 past and we'll finish off the session, hopefully just on time then. See you soon. Hello. Welcome back to Whoever's back. We'll just give everyone another minute and then we'll kick back off. Okay, I'm gonna kick us back off and hopefully the rest are gonna join in a short bit.
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome, welcome back. So the next section I'm going to be going through is the prepare section. So this is what really we're advising everyone to do at the start, but also then every quarter really. So every 3 months, this is something me and my team would, for example, look at to then plan for the upcoming quarter for our marketing strategy. So really it's the groundwork that you're laying to execute your go-to ecosystem strategy. This phase is about refining your offerings, planning and creating content, as well as setting up your structures needed for success. And step 1 is to refine your offerings, value, and proposition. I'm actually going to lay all the steps out, and then I'm going to go through them in detail. So step 1 is to refine your offerings, value, proposition. Step 2 is to prioritize partnerships and to start planning for the right partnerships. Step 3 is to design the human journey, another version or just way to look at your user flow or user experience. Step 4 is to plan your presence. And with this, we mean your story, your messaging, and the core channels you'll be using. And then step 5, to assemble your team, really to make sure that you have the right conditions to actually execute what you're planning to do. So I'm going to go through them in a bit more detail, and then we can open it up for questions before we ask the kind of reflection questions. So number 1 is to define your value, or refine, sorry. And if you're doing it for your first time, is to define your offerings value proposition. And here an outcome is to get a validated value proposition that resonates with stakeholders. So each quarter, ideally, you want to kind of refine your value proposition, and between each quarter, you're trying to like really gather insights and feedback from the market to understand, is this actually the most effective value proposition or not? And if there's ways you should refine it, then this kind of quarterly cycle is an opportunity for you then to do that. And here you can start to also think about your pricing strategy as part of your value proposition, for example, as well as the key features that you're talking about or communicating within your marketing and comms. And what you're trying to get here is alignment with your ecosystem. So these are just things that you want to keep in mind when you're defining that core value proposition, and then see it as a draft that you're then really gathering feedback on over the next quarter, right? Number 2, and this is maybe another kind of difference between traditional go-to-market approaches, we actually believe that every growth strategy has an element of partnerships and should have an element of partnerships, because we believe that that's one of the most strongest way to grow and most resilient way to grow over long term. It also is a wave that helps the whole entire ecosystem grow. So usually partnerships are both, two ways and not only one directional. So not are we planning to grow and uplift ourselves, but we're also trying to do that with others in the ecosystem. So here the objective or the purpose is to develop mutually beneficial partnerships within your ecosystem, ideally ones that also foster your growth. And the key outcome is to have a network of relationships and partnerships that are rooted in co-created values, and again, that foster ideally both of your growth. Step 3 is designing the human journeys. And here we want to understand how your audience moves from awareness eventually to advocacy and loyalty for your brand. So here it's really important to start to really map out what are the core 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 10 steps that the user is taking when they're interacting with our solutions and with our brand. And how can we start to be really more aware around what their needs are at each stage of that journey? How can we start to understand and even define the core value exchange that we want to provide at the different steps of that journey? So really, once we define our core value proposition, we now start to segment it and dissect it, into the different stages of the relationship. This is really important because if you're going on a first date with someone, your value that you're providing is going to be very different to if you're going to, your weekly date night with your husband of 10 years. So the type of relationship you have with your customers and the stakeholders you're interacting, whether it's through copy and digital campaigns or it's conversation through newsletters, or it's actually face-to-face conversations, that depth of relationship is really important to think about, and what you communicate and what people need and expect at the different stages is just really important to map out before you start to, share your story and interact with the world. And then step 4 is planning your presence. So once you understand your value proposition, once you've mapped out that journey, you can then start to actually create that narrative and position statement around that specific product, offering, or service. So here it's not just around your purpose narrative or your brand holistic narrative. It's more specifically a narrative that's going to guide, bringing that specific product or solution to the market. And here we usually recommend creating a one-page messaging guide. I usually like to call them a messaging Bible or a messaging Torah or a messaging Quran. Usually I switch between them. Sometimes it's, I just like to pick new religions really every time. But really it's that one pager that's going to guide all, the core messaging that we have around that specific offering, that specific service or offering or product that we're bringing to the world. And alongside that, we usually then have a content plan. So once we have the one-page messaging guide or Bible, we then have a content plan that allows us to understand what are we going to share over the next few months, usually next 3 months, that's then going to align with the guide, but also going to help us get closer to the objectives that we've planned in the stage before. And then finally,
can you send an example of the messaging guide after the call to all of us? It would be really useful to see like a concrete example.
Sure, I'll write that down. I can definitely share an example.
Thank you.
And I'll probably add that as a resource share, because that's a good idea. Just, we're actually working on a lot of resources, templates, and like workshop Miro boards that we're going to be releasing over the next few months. So if you haven't already, please do sign up to our newsletter. Actually, what I wanted to also share with you all is this framework itself. We've just launched a free card deck that goes over all these steps in detail. And that's also kind of part of the main homework, is to kind of review those in detail and see if you have any questions and see how you can start to even apply and implement some of those elements that we introduce. So I'm just going to share the link with you here, and I'm also going to share it as a follow-up in the email afterwards as well. 1 second. And you just have to sign up, but it's for free. So just feel free to sign up and you can then download the full card deck. But yes, David, I'll also be sharing an example of a messaging guide. And usually, like I said, we try to really restrict it to just a one-pager. And it's like all the most important elements that help us communicate what the product is to the right audience, right? Now, the other thing, like I said, is the content strategy. And this usually consists of planning the different themes that you'll be talking about, even deciding how it's going to start to look like. So from a creative direction, how is that content going to look like? It's deciding, is there going to be specific formats that we're going to be creating when we're creating or repurposing some of the content that we're creating? So that is in this kind of step, planning your presence. Like, how are we going to present ourselves really to the world? And then, like I said, the last step is to kind of assemble your team to just and again, if you're doing this for the first time, then it's good to think about the next year and not just also the next quarter. You can always refine and iterate that and realize, actually, we're spending too much on design. We need to reduce that in the next 3 months. Or you might realize after you start doing it, actually, this is going better than we imagined, and we need to actually onboard and hire more people. So really, it's just kind of a step to ensure that you have the right conditions that will allow you to keep the momentum forward. You're smiling, David. Is there a specific reason, or?
Yeah, it's like I didn't know one challenge is how you assemble a team when you have no money, but it's like, but
100%. But just to maybe like put down, because I think that's a really good point. Like this could also consist of, like I said, freelancers, agency partners. It could also consist of volunteers or interns, right? So it's just really, and maybe it is also around who in your team needs to take more of a marketing hat. So it's like, it's also looking at just the roles and the time and capacity. Maybe even you yourself are dedicating to marketing. And yes, there's always going to be the struggle with no time, no money. Usually it's still the same struggle with bigger teams, by the way, because they try to get more done. So it's funny how it's like if you're a startup, you don't have any money, no investment, it's that case. When you have a 10-team marketing team, we're still asking this, oh, how can we do it in this time and with this limited budget of like 10 times the amount in the other scenario? But so that's also just one thing to keep in mind. So like really just being conscious of it and embedding this in your marketing strategy is also just important, and ways we can address that tight money, tight time element. And sometimes we'd also be surprised, because if we don't bring this up constantly, we sometimes might not take that next step to invest in more time or invest in more resources. Because sometimes we might feel like we can, but when we go through this process and we especially start to see some traction, then sometimes the argument comes up, does it make sense to invest in more resources and team? And I'm going to pause here at the end of chapter 2. So really, this was the prepare section. It was, so as you can see, we're getting a bit more practical as we go down the chapters. And before I pose these questions, is there any questions around these 5 steps? So just summarize, refine your offering's value proposition, prioritize and plan your partnerships, design your core human journeys, plan your presence, and with that also your content and messaging guide, and then make sure that your team is assembled. Any questions? Then I have 2 questions to you. Number 1 is, what is the core purpose of your offering? And how does it align with the needs and values of your ecosystem? And this can be both human and non-human stakeholders if you're feeling bold enough today, but you can focus on just the human stakeholders for now. You can also just focus on your core customer if that's easier. Number 2 is, who are the key stakeholders in your ecosystem and what role do they play in supporting or interacting with your offering? And here I'm challenging you to think about everyone but your customer. David, I think it's your turn to go first, by the way. Or Max, actually. David or Max.
Yeah, I can go first. So in terms of core purpose, also we have 2 offerings, right? So the first is the product that we've built for insurance brokers. And in terms of it aligns with their needs in that they find filling forms sucks, and then it helps them do that without it being so painful.
Can you go one level deeper there? So not from a practical job that you're solving, but like, what's the deeper need that you're solving there?
The sort of deeper need is for the work to have meaning and value, because when they're just filling forms, it's very manual and very painful, but also it's a bit repetitive, and then it doesn't give them as much value or joy.
Cool.
Okay.
Love that.
And then the second purpose is kind of like, so the other one we do is we basically run like an internship every year where we have someone for 6 months. And then the goal is we give them the training experience it needs so that they can go on and get a new job in the tech industry. So in terms of that, like it aligns with the need that they have for like finding jobs, while like they really struggle because they don't have the experience. So it gives them the experience. And in terms of the key stakeholders, so basically, I mean, we work with our local council in terms of the internship, so they're like a key stakeholder. Yeah, I think that's it.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
And then while we're also in the role we play, supporting and interacting with them is they're looking to get more people in employment, so we support them in doing that.
Yeah, I feel like you answered both questions in one go, kind of.
Sure.
Like that. Thank you so much. Max, do you want to go next? If you
Yeah,
can.
sure. Core purpose of the offering is going to be basically we have to help business get the most out of digital marketing. We're a website agency. No, sorry, let me rephrase that. That's not actually totally correct. Whoops. So actually, our purpose of our website agency is to help clients convert through design. That's our purpose. Bad design leads to bad conversion rates. That's the philosophy. Who are the key stakeholders in your ecosystem? It's going to be like our referral partners and just people we work with, strategic partnerships. They're going to be important. They are important. Rely on each other, things like that. So, yeah.
Cool. So
Is that too
refer.
short, or is that enough?
No, that's definitely enough.
Cool.
There's no too short or too long with that. So thank you
Cool.
so much for sharing. Cecile, do you want to go last?
So yes. Okay. So so the core purpose, I would say it's to create a niche marketplace for exotic products. And the way it aligns with the needs is and values is to be able to offer visibility, quality, and yes, I will stay with these two. And the human, I would say, is creating connection, if I can say that.
So
And
that's your role. That's your role, is to help foster connection.
yes,
Mhm.
I think so.
And to whom? Is that to your main customers, or is that to other?
To main customers, to the brands also I'm going to work with, to some artisans, so different, this type of connection, because I'm in between.
Mhm.
So the customer is looking for something, and then I do the creation. I also create some products. So by doing the creation, I'm going to connect with other brands and other artists. And so it's like, if you see what I'm trying to explain. And for the last question, so the key stakeholder, I would say it would be my suppliers, the brand owners, and
I'd love to hone in the suppliers, actually. What's your relationship, or what's the role that you're
so
playing?
for now, because the way I'm starting the business, so I'm starting by selling exotic foods, okay? But then I'm going to add more and more different type of products. So for now, my supplier is the one I need to be able to sell what I want to sell. So I need to have a good relationship with them. They need to trust me, and also I need to trust them regarding the quality. And so for now, they're the main one, because without them, I'm kind of like nothing, because I choose the easy, not the easy route, but instead of like having stocks, or I decided to work on per order. So that's mean I'm playing like the middle woman. So receive an order, place my order. So I don't have any stock. So I don't have any. So
That
for me,
supplier relationship is like everything, right?
yes, it's everything. Yeah.
And actually, for you, then it becomes pretty like a lot easier than I think some of our examples, to actually explore what the non-human living beings are and that are part of your supply chain, for example. So like what about the soil that the fruit is coming from?
Yes, the soil, the sun.
So
Yeah.
those are all elements that can be started to even embed in your storytelling, for example, in your narratives, but also you can start to think about how is that defining or adding value towards your product, but also how are you adding value to it, right? So it's how do we look at this two-way relationship with your suppliers, with your customers, but maybe even with the soil that
Yes,
is
we
helping
study.
with it.
Yeah, the soil, the farmer, and like by also being careful on choosing the right products also, because you want to offer some quality and some bio products. Yeah. Mm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to take us now to the last chapter, which is the most exciting chapter, especially with the title being play. And really, this is all focused around executing and adapting. So this is where your strategy comes to life, and it comes to life through action. This is the stage that focuses on sharing your story, engaging with your ecosystem, and adapting based on real-time feedback to ensure alignment and success. Now, it doesn't mean that why are we doing the other two parts if we can just do this? Actually, most founders, startup founders, intuitively jump to this step. And because the other two, you don't see the immediate results of them, if that makes sense. However, the two steps are actually what, if you do them properly and if you revisit them over time and you refine them over time, is what's going to actually make this step even way more effective. Not just effective, but also way more aligned with where you want to consciously go with the brand. This starts with sharing your story. So the purpose of this is to launch your go-to ecosystem campaign with compelling messaging across all touch points, or at least the touch points that you feel are most relevant. And the key outcome of this is to have clear, consistent messaging and campaign assets that align with your ecosystem's values. So you can start seeing this as like a campaign that you're running, right? Or multiple smaller campaigns that you're also running. Now, how you can actually do that is by developing a content and publishing plan or calendar that actually specifies the exact types of content and messages that you're going to be sharing on the different days. And that being supported with cohesive assets that reflect kind of your core values as well as, what your ecosystem would be maybe resonating with. So what are the visual assets that you're also going to be creating with it that are going to guide those content pieces? Next, you want to launch and monitor your campaign or multiple campaigns to ensure alignment with your strategy and as well as to start doing early adjustments. It's a lot of the times that you start to launch something and there's opportunities where you can get some early feedback and start to even iterate straight away. And this is this like, we want to share our story and communicate to the world what we've already started to plan up. So after we've done all that strategizing, the essence work, the high level reflection, and then started to think about the audience, the partners, now this is the moment to start to share our story. Well, after we share our story, and this is where most startup founders actually stop, we actually think that it's really important to connect with our ecosystem. So to transition from this one-way storytelling to also start a two-way conversation, to deepen the relationships and trust. And if you have a place-based business or a local business, this is obviously a lot easier in starting those conversations and having those kind of back and forth two-way dialogues. And the key outcome for this is to start to create trust and to develop meaningful interactions with your ecosystem that enhance collaboration and really just deepen the trust between your ecosystem. On the other hand, it's also really, really important so that you can actually learn and gather instant feedback from your ecosystem as well. So how we can do that is engage key stakeholders and customers in meaningful conversations and start to actually systemically gather and document feedback. Or just insights from these conversations. We can also start to host events or open discussions to foster collaboration and deepen ecosystem relationships. Another thing we can also do here is literally set up interviews if we're feeling like we're really disconnected with some of our core audiences that we're trying to communicate with. After we do that, we start to monitor our effectiveness. And this is really the step where we start to track meaningful metrics to evaluate the impact of our strategy and refine actions. So once the story is live, once we started to interact, that's when we start to track the meaningful KPIs and we start to analyze some of that data. Is the data telling us something? And when we launch campaigns, we might launch multiple messages, for example, to different types of groups. We might use different channels. We might learn things through the feedback sessions or the conversations that we've picked up, that we've strategically designed, or we've just spontaneously had over the past, over the period of the month. And this is really where we're going to start to create a mini report, if you'd like. What are key learnings and what data can we pull to kind of back up these key learnings? And from that, we then go into refining our messaging. And just so you know, that's the last step of the play section. That means after we refine our message, after we refine potentially our offering, so we even recognize we need to maybe shift a bit of what we're building. So really, this is where this interacts with your product strategy, interacts with your entire business strategy, not just your communication, right? After we do that, we then go back to step one, sharing your story. So this is, again, a monthly cycle that happens where it's really sharing your story, connecting with your ecosystem, monitoring our effectiveness, and then refining our messaging. This happens every month, and really that means every cycle that then feeds into, well, what can we feed in? What are all the core learnings that we've gathered throughout these 3 months, and how can we start to refine this prepare section of our strategy? So the human journeys, for example, or the partnership approach that we're taking, or our core value proposition. And every year, that ideally will then also influence our ponder stage of the strategy. So how is that then influencing what we're actually believing? So it's a two-way process of what influences each other, right? The play section influences the ponder section influences, the prepare section influences the ponder, but also vice versa. The ponder is based off, the prepare is based off the ponder, and the play is based off the prepare. So to sum it up, I'd like to ask these two now questions around this last chapter. Question number one is, what opportunities exist what opportunities exist to engage your ecosystem in meaningful, trust-based conversations rather than just broadcasting your story that you might have not explored before, or you might have not so consciously thought about before? And question number two is, how will you gather and integrate stakeholder feedback to refine your offerings and ensure ecosystem alignment? And if you're already doing this, then how could you do it more frequently or better? And I don't know, Max, if you want to maybe start. I think you're the only one who hasn't started the round yet.
Well, blimey. Okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. Truth-based conversations. Oh, sorry, trust-based.
Trust-based. So this is really referring to basically how can you can even not think so much about the trust-based, but really what opportunities lay for you to actually create more of these spaces where you're having a two-way conversation with your core stakeholders.
It's going to have to be during existing the sales process, when you naturally have touch points with them. You can kind of maybe drill down during those conversations to open up new avenues, new opportunities, right?
I love it. So even within your sales process, how can it be a bit more two-way conversational is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And how will you gather and integrate stakeholder feedback to refine your offering and ensure ecosystem? See, that is a tricky one, because a lot of times when you gather feedback and you throw it into a document somewhere, you don't really value it. I think it's that would have to be broken down into like agile steps or something like that, into just feedback on specific areas. I think is much more valuable than broad scattergun approach, maybe. Sorry for that. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So being a bit more specific, maybe with the feedback that you're gathering with specific purposes and areas.
Yeah, that the way you said. Brilliant.
Thanks for sharing, Max. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. Cool. So what opportunities exist to engage your ecosystem? Yes, I mean, for us, what we've been doing like recently is actually really what we've been doing recently is really focusing in on the customers we have and then basically having like a lot more engagement with them, like, and then being a lot more closer and like, yeah, so that's been really good. And then it's definitely led to some results. Like, for example, a customer recommended us to another customer, so which we should talk about. So that's been really good. How will you gather and integrate stakeholder feedback to refine your offering and ensure ecosystem alignment? Yeah, I mean, for example, we had like an intern that rolled off, so we basically did like a session with him where we got some feedback about the internship, and then in terms of the customers, one of the things that we've changed, which has really shown us some results, is we're actually going to meet them in the offices now, and then meeting them in person has actually had bigger results because it builds the trust, and then we're able to actually get the feedback a lot more better because we can see what they're actually doing live, and then we can adjust from that.
Love it. So more operational updates. Thank you so much, David. Cecile, do you want to give this a shot?
Yes. So the first one, for me, I was thinking for next year, starting doing some interviews of the brands, some brands or some chef, and having them talking about why, how they started their brands, and how, and then something I'm going to share on the platform. So it's a different way also, not telling my story, but telling the story of the products and the person who built, who created the products. And for the second one, so I started something, so I don't know if it's, but it's like now when I'm doing myself some deliveries, I always try to stay a little bit around and to see first what people are taking first and the comments they're making to me. So like last time, one was really happy because he said, oh, I love this one. I just love the leafy one. So I always like put the notes, and if there is something different, I just keep. And so that's mean for the next order, I'm going to add more and change it a little bit. So I just listen what they're saying with they don't know it's me, so I'm just listening to what they're saying and also what they don't say, because if I notice like certain types of food, I don't know, they are the one like they don't take it a lot, then I will make sure that next time change a little bit. Yes.
I love that observational research. Well done. That's pretty advanced in the research world, the type of research you're doing. That's really great. What I'm hearing from both of you is the importance of existing customers and like deeply listening to them and creating more spaces to observe, to listen, to have these two-way conversations, which is something like most marketers skip over. And because we're constantly thinking about who's that next customer that we can get. But also on the other hand, I think, Cecile, what you're realizing is that you haven't set up those interviewer spaces with potential brands, or that you've been thinking about that, but also that could be used as a storytelling method, as well as deep, getting a better understanding of people in your ecosystem. So I love that, like, yeah, sometimes it can be, you can create that space, get to know someone more, but also that could lead into connecting it with your content strategy, for example. That's the end of session 4. That's all that I had today. Actually, what this is the theory of change. We actually went over it, but this is another template that I wanted to provide in case you wanted to go through it again, as it's part of this go-to ecosystem strategy. So there's a link to the Miro board here that you can access in your own time. This is a homework, but also if you feel like you've done this before and you don't want to do this, this is like really optional. And really the main other homework is to download the card deck that basically goes over what I displayed today, but in a bit more detail. And hopefully you can really try to implement a few of those things. So you don't have to do all of them. Maybe just a disclaimer, if these feel like a lot, I really would encourage you to spend a bit of time over the next few weeks, maybe before the end of the year, just to focus on, what are the things that at least you can fill out, that you feel confident about fill out, and really start to take it from top to bottom. So start with the ponder stage and then go down the framework. but hopefully that could at least give you a bit more clarity around at least what you know and where the gaps are on what you don't know when you start next year. But with that, I'd love to hand it over to the group after going over the key insights and takeaways from today, and just hear if there's any questions, as well as maybe any key insights that you take over from today's session. From my end, the three key insights I want to share is A, having a concrete strategy enables trust from investors. And as it is showcasing your strategic thinking, and it enables you to mitigate risks. And that's something that investors and funders are very, looking for or craving, if that's a better word, maybe. Number two is the go-to ecosystem framework enables you to align your business with principles of living systems, fostering really resilience, trust within your ecosystem, as well as mutual long-term growth. And it's not really, what I haven't introduced is how can you grow your product as fast as possible with as little time as possible. And then lastly, there are three elements of the go-to ecosystem framework, and it starts with pondering, it then goes into preparing, and then finally into playing. And these are three chapters that can guide you. So even if you don't do all of the things, they could even guide you into starting to craft your own go-to-market strategy. And elements of these is then what you can start to also present inside of your pitch deck, which is what we're going to go over in the next session. But that's enough for me. I'd love to hear, like I said, any key takeaways, or maybe what is the one biggest thing that you'd like to take away from the session. And if you have any other questions or want to go revisit over anything, we can also use the last few minutes for that. I'll pass the ball over to David to kick us off, and then we can pass that over to whoever wants afterwards.
So for me, I think the big takeaway was kind of like the objectives focus on team health and customer health. And then just learning the entire go-to ecosystem framework. So that's really good. And then obviously there's a lot there, but I was kind of like, I need to have a think about how, because obviously it takes time to do all this, how you incorporate bits of it. So you just slowly over time build it out.
Thank you, David. Feel free to pass the ball to whoever you want.
Cecilia up next.
So for me, it would be like the framework. I feel like it's important to implement something, and yes, it's important to do it, to be able to see some result, and also to be able to have some follow-up on what I'm doing, because like I'm doing things, but then it's kind of like could be difficult to have a follow-up on what I'm doing. So building a framework and building a proper plan is going to help me and to be more effective and reach my goals. Yes.
Yay. So a bit of structure, really. And
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of things, to be honest, but I agree. Maybe it's just the structure and clarity around it.
Yes, but for me, it's more like my issue is like more like how to stay organized on the day-to-day. So like I can start really well, like everything, and then after. So this is my main difficulty.
Thanks for sharing. Max, you're last or up next.
Sure.
What is the one thing you want to take away from today?
Sure, it's definitely the framework, just remembering the process of business, constantly evolving, reviewing, evolving, changing, adapting. Yeah, need to do it. Just hard when you get bogged down into running the day to day to keep track and keep ahead of looking out there, looking towards the horizon.
Yeah, definitely balancing the doing with the strategizing is always an issue for every single entrepreneur, I think, including myself, including all my clients. I've just shared again, just for everyone. I recognized before I shared actually the wrong link, sorry. What I shared now is the go-to ecosystem card deck that you can download, like I said, and this is really the main assignment homework for the next kind of week, is to really just go into the different cards and to try to think for yourself, what is realistic? What could I start to action out for myself? how could this potentially bring a bit more structure and clarity and order to my thinking around what I'm going to do in marketing next year. Any questions on the homework or how you can access the cards? Cool. Well, then we can finish right on time. Thank you so much for your energy. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch. Otherwise, the next week's session is going to be all about structuring your pitch deck for your funding round.
Is it the last session next week, or do we have to?
I believe it's the last session next week.
Is it you or is it Lee?
It's going to be Lee next week.
Okay.
Don't take my word that it's the last session. I think it is. Lee's like owning all of the sessions, so I'm not sure.
I think the next one will be Christmas, I guess, the last session. So
There you go. That makes sense. So it is the last session, yes.
Okay. So then and then it's finished and we don't have anything in January.
Yeah, and then it's over for so this was then the kind of course around branding and investment. We will be available over email. So this is probably the last time I'm going to see most of you actually. So just going to add my email address again here. Please feel free to get in touch if you ever want to chat. If you ever also want more strategic support on your marketing, you can always reach out to us and schedule a free discovery call or kind of consultation call. But otherwise, yeah, I hope we could stay in touch over LinkedIn as well. Actually, let me share that.
I think I added you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I saw that. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for running the course. It's been really fun, and thanks for like the way you've structured it. It's actually been very interesting and engaging.
Oh man, thank you so much for the feedback. I appreciate it. It's been super, super lovely getting to know you as well, and like really, really grateful. It's been a smaller group actually. Like I'm more used to presenting and giving sessions towards like 10 to 15 people, but actually this allowed it to be a lot more intimate and closer and more conversational. So I really enjoyed it myself as well. Awesome. Well, have a lovely evening. And
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you both.
Merry
Excellent.
Christmas,
Thank you very
Happy
much.
New Year, all the fun stuff.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.